typeface, so it's like.
Oh, Posh is doing it. That's why Posh's screen share there.
Welcome everyone trickling in. Get started in a minute. I want to give everybody a minute to filter in. I know it's a process to move between sessions, so don't want to jump the gun. All right, I think we will go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming to this session. This is Digital Project Delivery and Bidding, taking steps toward model as a legal deliverable through data standards. A few housekeeping things first. So you will be muted, so you don't have to worry about, us hearing you or anything like that. There is the Q&A feature. You should have heard about that a couple times now. Please use it for any questions you might have while we're talking. Then we'll have some people helping us out to make sure that all the questions get answered, or at least as many as we can. And of course, the recording for this session will become available shortly after the conference. All right, so what we're going to try and talk about today, well, first you'll hear about us, and then we're going to talk about challenges in bidding and solicitation, especially around the model, enhancing the bidding process and ecosystem, and the role of user-friendly tools within this, and where do we go next? So who are we? Okay, so I'm Andy Martin, Infotech's Chief Technology Officer. Much of my 25 years in the software industry has been focused on building software to help manage infrastructure construction. This has led me to, among other things, spending a lot of time thinking about and building things around digital project delivery, especially how to keep data flowing from start to finish and back again. All of this leads me to spending quite a bit of time with Terry. So Terry, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Terry Klein. I've been in the industry for 45 years. The first 15 years, I was an actual end user of the technology in active projects. And for the past 30, I've been working with technology providers to try to provide the tools that enable you to do the jobs that need to get done. All right. Well, We'd like to begin with a brief introduction of who is Infotech. You probably have heard this before. Infotech is the AASHTO contractor for AASHTOware project. Well, what exactly does that mean? AASHTO has a program called AASHTOware where they provide software for their member user community. And there are, in essence, 5 different product families. There's AASHTOware Bridge, Safety, Pavement, and permit routing, in which Infotech has no direct involvement. And then the 5th family is the AASHTOware Project family of tools, and that's all about construction management, and it is tightly integrated with the bidx.com online bidding utility that we created as well. So just in a nutshell, that's our relationship with AASHTO. That has been in place for 40 years, and we work with roughly 90% of all the US DOTs on their bid letting and construction management activities. Completely separate from that, we also provide solutions for local public agencies that are similar to, but different than the AASHTOware project technologies that we provide to AASHTO. And we also participate extensively as a thought leader in numerous industry panels, committees, transportation pooled funds, and so on. Transition to model as a legal deliverable. Well, who's supporting it? What are the activities going on, and really, what is it? So MALD has had letters of support, position papers issued by every major organization in the US: AASHTO, FHWA, ACEC, AGC, ARTBA, Building Smart, NIBS. All of them have issued statements in support of the move to digital project delivery, and in particular, model as a legal deliverable. In every one of those position papers, you're going to see a statement saying that it can work, it will work, but it absolutely will require the use of international open standards, not a vendor-specific proprietary file format. And in essence, what it is to discontinue the current practice of creating models, stripping out 2D profiles and plan sets from those models, and then throwing those models away, and instead put enough intelligence into the model to where this creation and stripping out of 2D plan sets is simply not necessary. The whole vision of model as a legal deliverable is to deliver an as-designed model with enough data to be able to stand alone, and then to maintain that data during the letting cycle of a construction project. And just at the bottom are a handful, a smattering of some of the DOTs that are actively working on MALD pilots already. This map here is the latest information from the transportation pooled funds showing which state agencies already have MALD pilots underway. Those in blue are the agencies that are in the process of planning their pilots, and then in orange are the ones that have discussions underway to create the plan to perform the pilots of model as a legal deliverable. Next slide, please. All right, so what are the challenges faced by the bidding process currently, and what is Infotech doing as the provider of bidx.com, which is, again, utilized by roughly 90% of all the US DOTs doing this type of work? Well, the current process, as we said, is extremely dependent upon stripping out 2D plan sets from already existing models. At the bottom of the slide, I did a search and I summarized the results I saw from last year. I started on January 1 and went to December 31st, and I looked at all the plan sets that were downloaded from bidx.com. And there were 45,000 plan sets. And if you apply a very conservative number of 100 sheets per plan set, that's roughly 4.5 million sheets of 2D PDFs or TIFF files that were downloaded from bidx.com last year alone. So if the goal of MALD is to do away with those plan sets, we've got some work to do, and this is what we're doing to begin to address that, and what we're seeing in the industry. There have been attempts at various agencies who've shared their experiences with us to use highly sophisticated, highly complex, highly expensive viewing technologies to attempt to resolve the model as a legal deliverable challenge. And the results that they're seeing are that it's hard to learn, it's time consuming, and that they needed a better solution to it. One of the complexities of model as a legal deliverable has absolutely nothing to do with technology. It is the legal definition of how do you sign, stamp, and seal as the engineer of record a model or a collection of federated models, which is more likely, and that is a complex state-by-state legal issue that has to be addressed with the legislature of that particular state. And we've seen several states where MALD was not a legal option, and the laws were changed in order to be able to make that a viable options. When you look at these pilots that we listed, what you typically see is models included with 2D plan sets, but the models are being designated as for information only initially. And what we have seen and what we anticipate to continue to see is this hybrid and eventual full model as a legal deliverable workflow. What we're seeing now is the hybrid 2D plan sets are the official document of record, but there is an IFC model associated with it for information only. As that agency's confidence and skill set of creating models with usable data evolves, then we see a move to a hybrid situation where they're producing and delivering an IFC smart model with a 2D plan sets, but now it's flipped. And now the 2D plan set is stamped as for information only, and the official deliverable of record is in essence the IFC model itself. And then lastly, some of the more leading edge agencies have progressed to the point where they're actually delivering a model as a legal deliverable smart IFC model with the defined data standards for achieving what they need to achieve without a 2D plan set whatsoever. So that is eventually where the industry is headed. It is where FHWA has identified they want to be by 2031, and that's what we're seeing now in this area of model as a legal deliverable. Next slide, please. Okay, very good.
So what does this mean for Infotech? What does this mean for our constituents, and what does this mean for the industry? You know, like when a proposal is advertised on BidX, it is often the first time the contracting community will see the details of the projects in that proposal. Currently, that could mean scouring through many lists of items and hundreds of plan sheets, like Terry was mentioning, sometimes all with the conclusion of, oh, this isn't actually a project that I would like to pursue. As we move to delivering the model and we have more models on more projects and more proposals, we have the opportunity to really improve that experience for everyone. So first, like Tara was saying, these models already exist, right? They're using them to generate the 2D plans, you know, and sometimes they're included already on the proposals even as for information only, but sometimes they're still in that proprietary format of the large design software. And that is a barrier to a lot of individuals, and it becomes inaccessible to them, and they have to, you know, go the old way. So in the past, you know, a prospective vendor would need to invest significant resources to either acquire that design software that has high learning curves just to see what's in the model, or just, you know, not have an opportunity to take that approach. But much like how we've all become accustomed to working like with PDFs, we should expect anyone to be able to open and view a model, you know, like, and the editing still left to the design software, just as you would expect, like with a PDF. You don't edit PDFs generally. You leave that to like Word or whatever else that was the editing software. The same would apply here. So seamless, right? So like, unlike PDFs, we don't want to continue the burden of a bunch of file juggling and trying to figure out which ones are which and versions and things like that, you know, _V3_final_final or whatever. So we strongly believe that data should be where you need it, when you need it. And seamless to me means that should be frictionless, right? It should just be there. It should just work. And a huge part of making that happen is making sure that everyone has ways to easily interact with that data. So in bidding, no, undoubtedly, because all the reasons we've been talking about, but also throughout the project and beyond. So Infotech is making a consistent model viewing experience so that this can be true for all of our part, and then we can hopefully lead the way for the rest of the industry to follow along as well. And one of the ways that's actually the only way that we believe that this can work is through open data standards. So we have to be able to rely on them because it lets us focus on making an excellent model interaction experience instead of spending time supporting all of the different proprietary formats. But it's more than just that, right? It's awesome for the data interaction in the moment, but it also provides longevity to that data. So no matter what happens to Infotech or any other company, you will always have a means to interact with that data as long as it's in one of those well-documented open formats like IFC. In addition, right, open standards makes archival possible. So you can, you can't really print out a model and put it in your filing cabinet for archival, but you won't really have to because you have these open standards and you have, digital archives that will be sufficient, and if not more than sufficient, better.
Thank you, Andy. Let's talk a bit about the modern world we're in now and what are the expectations in order to achieve model as a legal deliverable. The workforce that we have now have been exposed to mobile devices and computer-based, activities since they were, 2 years old. They have an expectation of operational predictability. They need to know that it's going to be a consistent experience to what they're accustomed to. That if I'm on a mobile device and I move my fingers this way, it's going to do this thing. And that's what we have to address is this usability that is predictable and yet requires absolutely little to no training whatsoever. As Andy mentioned just a moment ago, it's got to be device and vendor independent. And from our lens, I don't think it's possible to have a single model for any project that is going to be able to retain all of the necessary data that's going to be required. I think it's going to be a collection of models that together come together to provide a visual representation and, more importantly, a data specific representation of the asset being built. So any effort to address model as a legal deliverable from our end must support multiple federated smart models simultaneously. And it must allow the user multiple optional ways of collecting the data and then applying the data that's been collected to some real world use case scenario that they're trying to resolve. Next slide, please. All right, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share my screen real quick. And I have a short 4-minute recording of a new IFC viewer that is integrated into the bidx.com system that, again, is utilized by roughly 90% of all US DOTs. Now this, I'm stopping and starting this as we move forward. This that I'm about to show you is already available in the online bidx.com. You start by logging in using your account information. From there, you choose the agency where you want to go to a letting. Once you choose your agency, you'll see a list of letting dates that are associated from that particular agency. You choose your letting date. And then from there, bidx.com supports the process, if you choose to do it, of having multiple proposals associated to a single letting. In this particular example, there's just one proposal, but you would choose from that selection the proposal that you need to access. And then from that proposal, then you would go into the plan room where you'd be able to access either 2D plan sets or 3D models. In this example here, there are two different interfaces. One says drawings, one says 3D models. In my example, we've got nothing but PDF files, but anyone who's used bidx.com should already know that it supports both 2D PDFs and 2D tagged information file format TIFF files as well. To go to the 3D models, you simply select that tab. If in this collection of models there were 2 or 3 that you needed, you could selectively choose from that button in the upper right-hand corner and open just that subset, or you can go to the upper left-hand corner of the interface and you'll see a button that says Select All. And if you choose that button, you'll see it activates all of the federated models. And then at the bottom of the interface is the ability to open all those up simultaneously. Now, this video has not been sped up in any way. This was recorded live, and these are the 5 separate IFC files that are coming in from the bidx.com interface. As soon as it loads roughly 90% of the models, it will do that camera orientation move that you just saw, sort of a fit view orientation. And then from there, you're able to easily zoom around and select whatever object within the model you have any particular interest in. I'm going to slide that back just a bit for a second. So once you select the object you're interested in, that will activate the Properties tab in the interface to show you all of the data that was created when the IFC file was exported or created from whatever authoring utility that you're using to create your IFC files. In addition to the Properties tab, there's a tab for models. You can see here the 5 separate federated IFC models that I'm currently working with. And any one of those models can have their display turned on and off by simply using that little eyeball icon. And then lastly, in that interface on the upper left there is an IFC display. For anyone who works with IFC on a regular basis, it is very structured and has a schema of what particular data is stored in what particular location for what type of asset or item type. And if you're very, very comfortable working in that environment, in addition to being able to spin and zoom and selectively choose what you want graphically, we wanted to provide with this IFC viewer the schema support so that you could just scroll down and select the item that you're interested in, which will automatically zoom to it in the display window. And then if you go back to the Properties tab, you'll be able to see all of that data for the object that has now been selected. Here we're loading a separate model. This is obviously a bridge IFC model as opposed to a roadway one. And I'm going to walk through some of the interfaces. I don't think you can see that, so I'm going to minimize that a little bit. One of the things you'll first see is the ability to change the display of units if you were to measure the model from metric to imperial, which I've just done. And now what you'll see is an appearance option and a fit view capability, which simply zooms to the extent of the model itself. Under appearance, we have the ability to change it from a shaded model display to a wireframe, a triangulated wireframe, or you'll also see a button that says isolate. Yeah, you could select any object within the model or multiple federated models and hit isolate, and everything except the selected item will disappear temporarily so that you can focus your attention on the object that you're working with. So here we see the wireframe display, and then under camera, there's the option to choose between the traditional human vanishing point perspective orientation to an orthographic orientation if you prefer to work that way. And there's also multiple preset angles, camera angles like top, bottom, left, and right to help you get yourself oriented really quickly. Here, what I'm doing is I have selected the tool to do a cross-section cutting action, and I have chosen an existing object within the model to use as a defined cutting plane. And now I can simply slide up and down that yellow arrow and move the cutting plane to any particular point within the model that I have an interest in seeing at that time. And then lastly, in the video recording that I have here is the measurement utility. Currently, the utility has two different measurement capabilities. One is to do a length measurement, which you would be able to hit a point, and it would show you, in essence, the development of a polyline and show you the overall length. And the one I'm using in the recording here is one called Edge, where you can simply choose that method and click anywhere on an object's edge, and it will show you the calculated length for that particular edge of that object. And lastly, wrapping up the recorded video is to show that all of these functions that I've just showed in this recording work equally well and equally in an intuitive way, whether you're using a desktop machine, a laptop, or some sort of mobile device. Here, this is the exact same capabilities, including the ability to cut cross sections and perform measurements. Just simply using it on a mobile device works exactly the same. And with that, I'll stop sharing.
I will resume sharing. All right. So there's a fun twist on a saying that we've been talking about lately. We say, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a model is worth 1,000 pictures. So this, these models, everyone wins when we start moving to models. It gives greater ability for prospective contractors to quickly understand a project and determine if it's the right kind of project for them. It improves communication between contractors and owners, which cannot be overstated in how important that is, because it can prevent issues and costly changes later due to misunderstandings between the two parties. And I mean, beyond that, there's a huge benefit in moving to open data standards. If this model already exists, let's use it everywhere we can. Let's make sure we're keeping that model in open standards. Make sure that we're not redundantly creating that model, bringing it forward through the process, making sure that we're preserving all of that rich data that was created during design and into bidding and into construction. And use tools like BidX, to have these higher quality bids and project outcomes, because these are products that are going to support models in the bidding process. I think in this way, everyone wins, because the agencies are going to get better bids. Contractors can more quickly understand the natures of the products or projects and whether or not it's appropriate to bid on, and they can fashion better, higher quality estimates for their bids. The data flows where it needs to be, when it needs to be there. And at the end of the day, it's just a paradigm shift that leads to a much better structured world where we can build upon these models and upon this data in new and interesting ways. I think we're just getting started.
I will put some closing thoughts here together, and I've got something planned to show you that Andy knows nothing about, but I'm going to do it anyway. Models as a legal deliverable are coming, and that open standards, make life better. I just want to take a moment to talk about models in general, why I'm so passionate about them, and why I believe so strongly in model as a legal deliverable. Models have had a place to play in my entire life from the time I was a child. I don't know about anybody else. But I used to build hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these little automobile and airplane and boat models, and spent my whole youth doing that with my older brother. As soon as I got into the industry, I was in the petrochemical industry, and one of my jobs was to build physical models of chemical plants using colored tubing and glue, and actually building models by hand. That was difficult. The minute I started working with computer-based systems, my job was a 2D, CAD guy, but I was building models the first day I was there, and I've done it ever since. And I know where it came from, and I know the value that it represents. So this whole, a model's worth 1,000 pictures, that just cannot be emphasized enough. But still, a model all by itself is just a pretty picture. It's only half the story. To make the model useful in any long-term way, which is really the point of this, this is one step in the overall overarching effort of digital project delivery, is to get it through letting, to get it through the legal process of getting it from design to construction, but ultimately to be usable in the end. We've heard it said 1,000 times that the design and even the construction phases of a project might last 5-10 years, depending on the complexity of the project, but that asset has to be maintained for 100 years. I mean, who in the audience has ever driven over the Golden Gate Bridge, right? It's still there. It's still being maintained. It's going to be for it's certainly my lifetime. Now, imagine if that bridge was built in modern times, where we have the ability to deliver not just an as designed or an as let, but an as built model that then has all the sensors and modern collection technologies that are there to maintain an as is model and do predictive analysis and all those types of things. So model as a legal deliverable is a necessary stepping stone for the bigger picture, and it is absolutely coming. It has support from every association, and we're excited about it.
Absolutely. And I love that, Terry. I love the plastic model, analogy, because I mean, I think that it's all evolution. It's all building upon each other, and we're at this really interesting moment where, I'm sure many of you have heard people talk about IFC and talk about models or are dealing with them yourselves, but we're starting to see that actually have tangible results, with things like IFC, where, I'm gonna underscore some points we've already been making throughout the session. It helps you bring your data forward in a way that everyone can benefit from. It's that bringing the data where you need it when you want it there, in a very elegant package. In addition, like bidding, talking about bidding throughout this, it's when a lot of people first encounter that model. It's the entire contracting community. It's their first time they're seeing it. Having user-friendly tools is going to enable the adoption of model as a legal deliverable. It's going to make it accessible. It's going to make this something that can be a reality instead of just something we talk about. So I guess, I would want to leave us with a little bit of a call to action, right? Like the build models, absolutely 100% build models, add as much robust data as you possibly can, use IFC, put it all in BidX, everyone's going to win. It's going to be a great thing. When we have these higher quality bids, we have better project outcomes, it's because we've created products that support these processes in the best way possible. So yeah, with that, agencies can start uploading models to BidX now, like Terry showed. That experience is coming soon, but even today, we are supporting model viewing in BidX. So I hope you take some time to get to know it and learn about it. And I'd love to hear more about it as you do. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We have about 10.5 minutes until the next session. So it probably leaves us about 5 minutes to answer any questions. I did just check in the question area of the interface, and there are 2 questions in there. I'll just read and respond to the first one, and then Andy, hand it off to you for any response you want to add.
Sure.
Let's see. We have the project asset lifecycle consists of multiple models broadly categorized as design, constructible, as built, eventually maintenance. For greater bidding accuracy and confidence, contractors need, or at the very least prefer, a constructible model. What are your thoughts on taking MALD a step further in this direction. Well, I believe we've address that verbally in what I was just saying about the need for this and it being part of the bigger picture. I'll elaborate on the viewer that I showed and what our plans for that are. Currently, that viewer is exactly that. It's a viewer to be able to show you the model, the geometry, and the data that was provided in that model, but that is certainly not the end all for that viewer in our current planning. We anticipate using that existing viewer as a platform for task-specific utilities to be able to make use of the data that is provided in the IFC model in multiple ways, one of which, being the identification, searching for, collecting, and gathering of specific types of data in order to perform specific types of tasks without ever actually modifying the IFC file. Now, none of that is developed currently, but certainly those are our long-term plans for that viewer, is for it to be not just a viewer, but a platform for additional capabilities.
Yeah, I agree completely. Thinking of the model viewer as kind of just the way we're interacting with that data, we would expect to build upon it. You select an element within the model, you saw all of the IFC data that came from the design phase. Well, let's also put the pay item information and maybe some funding information and any other types of information that's going to help make a higher bid accuracy, but greater confidence. Add the Q&A feature in BidX right into that model, so you can click on an area or highlight an area and say, this doesn't seem quite right. Let's figure out where there's some discussion that needs to happen. That's all just we're like I said, we're just on the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot more to come. We're kind of in this catch-22 at the moment where there needs to be these model tools to get people to do more, add more models to their projects and proposals. And as there's more of this happening, it'll iterate more and evolve more. And I think we're just going to get better and better and better at it.
Then there's two more questions that I see. The second one is from Brian. It says, Maldello is one solution provider I'm aware of for signing and sealing electronic files at this time. Are there other solutions available to assist in signing and sealing electronic files? Brian, I am familiar with Maldello. I work with Terry Walters on a fairly regular basis. I've seen it at various industry events where he's presented. It's based on a blockchain technology to assure security and all those types of things. It is a one of early adopters. Yeah, I would say, one of the first to recognize a need for a commercial application and to throw their hat in the ring. I think that's going to change as we move forward. I'm sure there'll be other entrepreneurs who identify the need. As you saw from that map, roughly only about half of the DOTs are already involved in MALD and doing active pilots with it. And as that grows, the FHWA has thrown, their vision out there. By 2031, we want to have people doing, agencies doing these things this way. So I think as we get closer to the 2031 deadline, we'll see more options on that. Andy, are you familiar with any other alternative commercial products for that?
No, I can't think of any commercial products that are available today other than Modelo right offhand. But I think this is definitely a problem that's trying to be solved. Terry said it well. I would just reiterate a lot of what he said, but it comes up time and time again. Like, we can't have this as a legal deliverable until we can solve this problem. So I think Terry said it well. It is a problem right for the solving, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of innovation in that front.
Yeah, and the last question I see and that we have time for now is from JJ saying, do you see MALD trickle down to the local level on federal funded projects? I don't see it being mandated that it be there, but I think it's going to be there simply from the evolutionary process of why would you go back to an inefficient system when a new system has been established as an industry norm? For example, when I was a kid growing up, I had a telephone in the house that had a rotary dial. Do I want to use one of those again? No, there's a better way. And I think that's what's going to happen with MALD. And in order to achieve digital project delivery and all the promises that that go along with that, MALD must exist. It must be incorporated, and it must be an effective way of doing these the transitions from design into construction. And once it is fully established and people understand it, and it's reliable and predictable, I think it's going to be used industry wide, simply because it needs to be used industry wide, or at least those are my thoughts on it, Andy.
Couldn't agree more, Terry. The reality is, right, like this is a paradigm shift. So it has, much like some of the other conversations we're having at eMERGE, like with AI, like where there's a certain amount of fear, uncertainty, and doubt about these tools. But as the paradigm starts to shift and you start to see the new benefits that they're providing, you don't ever look back. Like we didn't consider going back to candlelight over light bulbs. We didn't consider horses over automobiles. Like that's kind of the type of paradigm shift we're talking about here, I think. The reality is it's here to stay, and we just need to create the momentum and the tools and the participation to really make it that paradigm shift, that better thing.
Andy, if you'll flip one more slide, it'll show what's coming up after us, I believe. And I think we're at the end of our session.
All right. Thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate the questions. And I guess, just to reiterate what's on the slide, it's the lunch break now. So you have 30 minutes, I think, to yourself. And then there are 3 different sessions at 1 p.m. for us to enjoy: leveraging ADCMS technology as a marketing tool to win work, the war for productivity, a roadmap for innovation in civil infrastructure workforce development, and overcoming fear in new tech adoption, the role of change management. Thank you all again.
Thanks, everyone. And for the handful of you still here walking out the door, just a reminder, all these sessions are being recorded and will be available for roughly a 30-day period after eMERGE. Have a great day.